On my wife's birthday I paid for. She said the best gift would be if I left her life. So I vanished, sold the house, and froze all accounts. A week later, you know what's funny about turning 40? Everyone expects you to have your shit together by then. Like somehow the universe hands you a manual on your birthday that explains how to be a real adult. But standing in my kitchen that Tuesday morning, staring at 3 layers of what was supposed to be the perfect lemon cake, I felt more lost than I had at 25. The recipe was burned into my memory. Mom's handwriting on that yellowed index card I'd swiped from Marissa's mother's recipe box years ago. 2 cups flour, 1 3/4 cups sugar, half a cup of butter. I'd been up since 5 a.m., creaming butter and measuring vanilla extract like my marriage depended on it. Hell, maybe it did. The kitchen smelled like heaven. That sweet, citrusy scent that used to fill her childhood home every birthday. I could picture little Marissa with frosting on her nose, begging her mom for just one more finger swipe of the bowl. That's the woman I fell in love with 15 years ago. The one who laughed at my terrible jokes and stole bites of cookie dough when she thought I wasn't looking. But that woman had been MIA for a while now. I spread the cream cheese frosting with the kind of precision that would make those Food Network guys jealous. Every swirl deliberate, every edge smooth. The cake looked like something straight out of a magazine. 3 perfect layers with delicate lemon slices arranged on top, like little golden crowns. This wasn't just any birthday cake. This was an apology, a love letter, a desperate plea all rolled into one dessert. Maybe this time, I muttered to myself, stepping back to admire my handiwork. Maybe this'll remind her why we work. The dining room was already set up like I was hosting the damn president. I'd hung those paper lanterns she loved from our honeymoon in Italy, the ones gathering dust in the garage for 3 years. Ordered her favorite flowers, white peonies that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Even called her college roommate Sarah to drive up from San Diego, because I knew Marissa missed her like crazy. The lunch was supposed to be intimate. Just family and a handful of close friends. Her brother Wallace would probably show up late and complain about the food, but whatever. Her sister Jenny would spend the whole time on her phone, but at least she'd be there. And maybe, just maybe, Marissa would look at me the way she used to. Like I mattered. Like I was more than just the guy who paid the mortgage and took out the trash. When the doorbell started ringing around noon, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. The one that showed up whenever I had to perform the role of happy husband in front of an audience. But I pasted on my best smile and opened the door to Jenny and her kids, followed by Sarah with a bottle of expensive wine and way too much enthusiasm. "Oh my God, it smells incredible in here," Sarah squealed, giving me one of those awkward side hugs that made it clear she was Team Marissa in whatever Cold War was happening in our house. Marissa came downstairs looking stunning in that blue dress I'd bought her last Christmas, the one she claimed was too fancy for anywhere we actually went. Her hair was perfect, makeup flawless, smile bright enough to power the whole neighborhood. She worked the room like a politician, hugging everyone and laughing at all the right moments. But when she looked at me, there was nothing, not even annoyance, just emptiness. Lunch went exactly how I expected. Wallace showed up 40 minutes late with some lame excuse about traffic, then immediately started bitching about how the chicken was too dry. Jenny's kids ran around breaking stuff while she scrolled through Instagram. Sarah kept bringing up college stories that somehow always made me sound like the boring husband who ruined all the fun. I played my part, smiled, nodded, refilled drinks, made small talk about the weather and property taxes and whatever Netflix show everyone was binge-watching. But the whole time, I kept glancing at that cake sitting on the kitchen counter, waiting for its moment. When it was finally time, I carried it out like I was presenting the crown jewels. 3 layers of perfection, with 40 tiny candles flickering like little prayers. Everyone sang happy birthday, while I stood behind Marissa's chair, my hands resting on her shoulders. For just a second, she leaned back into me, and I thought maybe. "Make a wish, baby," I whispered in her ear. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and blew out every single candle. Everyone cheered and clapped, and I leaned down to kiss her cheek while the smoke was still curling up toward the ceiling. That's when she turned to look at me, really look at me. For the first time in months, I had her complete attention. My heart did this stupid little skip, like a teenager asking someone to prom. "This is beautiful," she said, running her finger along the edge of the cake plate. "Really beautiful." I felt myself grinning like an idiot. I remembered how much you loved your mom's recipe. Took me 3 tries to get the frosting right, but honestly, she interrupted, her voice cutting through the chatter around us like a knife. The best gift would be if you left my life. The words hit me like a physical blow. The room went dead silent, and I mean dead. Sarah's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Jenny looked up from her phone for the first time all day. Even Wallace's kids stopped running around to stare. I felt my hands go cold, then numb. The kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads outward until your whole body feels like it's made of ice. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything, but no words came out. Marissa, Jenny started, but her sister just shrugged. What? We're all adults here. I'm just being honest. Honest. Like honesty was some kind of virtue when you used it to destroy someone in front of their friends and family. Like there was honor in choosing your 40th birthday as the moment to finally tell your husband of 15 years that you wanted him gone. The rest of the party dissolved pretty quickly after that. People made awkward excuses about early dinners and long drives home. Sarah hugged Marissa goodbye and wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Wallace grabbed 2 pieces of cake for the road and left without saying a word. Jenny at least had the decency to squeeze my shoulder on her way out, but even that felt like pity. And then it was just us. Marissa went upstairs to change clothes like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just nuked our marriage in front of everyone we knew. I sat at that dining table, still decorated with those stupid Italian lanterns, staring at the cake I'd spent all morning perfecting. 40 candles worth of wax had dripped onto the frosting, leaving little craters in all my careful work. The lemon slices were starting to brown at the edges. It looked exactly like I felt, ruined. I cut myself a piece anyway. Not because I was hungry, but because someone should eat the damn thing. It tasted like everything I remembered from her childhood stories, bright and sweet and full of love. Her mother's love. The kind of love that showed up at 5 a.m. to cream butter and measure vanilla. The kind of love that believed a perfect cake could fix anything. But some things can't be fixed with sugar and flour and good intentions. I sat there until the sun went down, eating cake in the dark and finally understanding what Marissa had been trying to tell me for months without words. I wasn't just unwanted in this house. I was invisible. A ghost who paid bills and fixed broken things and baked birthday cakes for someone who wished he didn't exist. That night, I made a decision. If she wanted me gone, I'd give her exactly what she asked for. But I'd do it on my terms, in my time, and in my own way. The cake sat on the counter for 3 more days before I finally threw it away. But by then, I was already planning my exit. You don't become invisible overnight. It's a slow burn, like watching paint fade in the sun. One day you're there, solid and real, and then bit by bit, piece by piece, you start disappearing until you're nothing more than a shadow moving through your own damn house. I should have seen it coming when she decided my home office needed to become her wellness sanctuary. That's what she called it. A wellness sanctuary. Like our house was some kind of spiritual retreat instead of a 3-bedroom ranch I'd been busting my ass to pay for since we got married. Babe, you barely use this room anyway, she'd said, standing in the doorway with her hands on her hips like she was surveying conquered territory. And I really need a space for my yoga practice and meditation. You know how important my mental health is right now. My mental health, apparently, didn't factor into the equation. I'd built that office from scratch when we first moved in. Painted the walls myself, this deep blue color that reminded me of the ocean. Put up floating shelves for my books, set up my computer desk by the window so I could look out at the backyard while I worked. It was my space, the one room in the house that felt like me. But I didn't fight it. Know why? Because I thought being a good husband meant making sacrifices. I thought love was about putting her needs first, even when it meant I didn't have anywhere to put mine. So I moved my computer to a corner of the bedroom, stacked my books in boxes in the garage, and watched her transform my sanctuary into hers. She painted over my ocean blue with this awful beige color she called calming neutral. Bought expensive yoga mats and meditation cushions, and one of those singing bowl things that made sounds like a dying whale. Within a month, I couldn't even recognize the room. It was like I'd never existed in there at all. The office was just the beginning, though. Next came my chair, this old leather recliner I'd inherited from my dad. It wasn't pretty, I'll give you that. The leather was cracked in places, and one of the arms had a permanent dent from where my old man used to rest his beer. but it was comfortable as hell, and sitting in it made me feel connected to something bigger than myself. "It's an eyesore," Marissa announced one Saturday morning, like she was delivering a medical diagnosis. "It completely ruins the flow of the living room." Flow. Everything in our house had to have the right flow according to some interior design blog she'd been obsessing over. Never mind that I'd been coming home from 10-hour days and sinking into that chair for 5 years. Never mind that it was one of the few things I had left of my father. "Where am I supposed to sit?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. She gestured vaguely toward the couch, this pristine white thing she'd bought that looked like it belonged in a museum instead of a living room. "We have plenty of seating." But that couch wasn't mine. Nothing in that living room was mine anymore. She'd slowly replaced everything. The coffee table, the lamps, even the throw pillows, until I felt like a visitor in my own house. The chair went to the garage, right next to my boxes of books and the old desk lamp I'd used in college. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe I'd set up a little corner out there where I could read and relax. But the garage kept filling up with more of my displaced belongings, and pretty soon there wasn't room for anything except my growing collection of exile. The final insult came when she decided we needed space in our bedroom. "Not space for me, space for me. I think it would be good for our relationship if you slept in the guest room for a while," she said one night, not even looking up from her phone. I've been reading about how couples who sleep separately actually have stronger marriages. I wanted to ask her where exactly she was reading this bullshit, but I already knew. Some lifestyle blog written by women who'd probably never been married longer than 5 minutes. The same women who convinced her that my leather chair was ruining the feng shui of our living room. "How long is a while?" I asked. She shrugged. "We'll see how it goes." That was 8 months ago. The guest room had become my permanent residence, complete with the uncomfortable mattress and the single nightstand that wobbled every time I set my water glass down. Meanwhile, she and her mother spent weekends redesigning the master bedroom, turning it into another one of her sanctuaries. I wasn't allowed input on the color scheme or the furniture arrangement. Hell, I wasn't even allowed to hang my clothes in the closet anymore. She'd moved all my stuff to the hall closet, claiming she needed more space for her expanding wardrobe. But the real kicker was Wallace. Her brother had been temporarily crashing in our basement for 6 months, ever since his latest get-rich-quick scheme had gone belly up. Wallace was 35 years old and had never held a job for longer than a year, but somehow I was the asshole for suggesting maybe he should find his own place. "Family helps family," Marissa would say whenever I brought it up. "Besides, he's going through a rough patch right now." Wallace's rough patch seemed to consist mainly of eating my groceries, using my Netflix account, and making snide comments about my cooking during dinner. He'd sit at my kitchen table, the one I'd bought and paid for, and criticize everything from my choice of seasoning to my bourgeois habit of using cloth napkins instead of paper towels. "You know, most people don't need to make such a production out of a simple Tuesday night dinner," he'd say, picking at the chicken I'd spent an hour preparing. "But I guess some folks just like to show off." And Marissa would laugh. Actually laugh, like her unemployed brother mocking my efforts to make a nice meal was the height of comedy. I'd sit there chewing my food and wondering when exactly I'd become the outsider in my own family. When had my wife started taking her brother's side in every conversation? When had my opinions stopped mattering in decisions about my own house? The answer, I realized, was gradually. So gradually that I hadn't noticed until it was too late. Every night, I'd lie in that guest room bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of my own house. Marissa's yoga videos playing in my former office, Wallace's video games echoing up from the basement, the dishwasher running because I was the only one who ever thought to load it. I felt like a boarder who'd overstayed his welcome, a ghost haunting a house that used to be his home. The worst part wasn't losing my space or my chair or even my bedroom. The worst part was how normal it all felt after a while. How I'd learned to ask permission before using my own kitchen, to apologize for taking up space in my own living room, to make myself smaller and quieter so I wouldn't disturb the new order of things. I'd been erased so slowly, so completely, that I'd almost forgotten I used to exist at all. But that birthday cake moment, that cold, brutal honesty in front of everyone we knew, that woke me up. Made me realize that I hadn't just been fading away. I'd been actively pushed out, inch by inch, until there was nothing left of me but the guy who paid the bills and kept his mouth shut. Love isn't supposed to erase you. It's supposed to see you, celebrate you, make space for you to be yourself. I hadn't been seen in years. The morning after Marissa's birthday disaster, I couldn't sleep past 5 a.m. My brain kept replaying that moment. Her cold eyes, those brutal words, the way everyone just sat there like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. So I did what I always do when my mind won't shut up. I went to work early and buried myself in spreadsheets. But this time, instead of diving into client portfolios and quarterly reports, I found myself staring at our personal banking website. Not because I was looking for trouble. Hell, I was trying to avoid thinking about trouble. I just wanted to lose myself in numbers that made sense, in accounts that balanced, in a world where everything added up the way it was supposed to. Our finances had always been my department. Marissa claimed she was bad with money, which was her way of saying she preferred spending it to managing it. Fair enough. I'm good with numbers. Always have been. Started doing the books for my dad's auto shop when I was 16. Put myself through college working as a bookkeeper for 3 different small businesses. Money talks to me in a language I understand. Clean, logical, predictable. So when I logged into our main checking account that Wednesday morning, I wasn't expecting any surprises. I was just looking for something familiar, something that would make sense in a world that had suddenly gone completely sideways. The first thing I noticed was the balance. We should have had around 12 grand sitting in checking. I'd calculated it in my head the night before, factoring in my last paycheck and the usual monthly expenses. Instead, we had $3,247. My stomach did this little flip, the way it does when you're driving and suddenly realize you might have missed your exit. I refreshed the page, thinking maybe the bank's website was glitching. Nope. Still $3,247. I clicked through to the transaction history, expecting to find some automatic payment I'd forgotten about. Maybe the homeowner's insurance had renewed early, or the mortgage company had pulled an extra payment by mistake. Simple explanations for a simple problem. What I found instead made my coffee go cold in my cup. Transfer to M. Voss Personal, $2,400. March 15th. Transfer to M. Voss Personal, $1,800. March 22nd. Transfer to M. Voss Personal, $3,200. April 5th. ATM withdrawal, $800. April 12th. Transfer to M. Voss Personal, $2,100. April 18th. The list went on and on. Page after page of money flowing out of our joint account and into an account I didn't even know existed. Marissa's personal account, apparently. The one she'd never mentioned in 15 years of marriage. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through months of unauthorized transfers. Not just hundreds of dollars here and there. We're talking thousands. Big chunks of money disappearing from our account while I was at work, trusting that the woman I'd married was handling our finances responsibly. I grabbed a legal pad and started writing down numbers, adding them up in neat columns the way my dad taught me. By the time I was done, the total made me physically sick. $37,600. Almost $40,000, gone without my knowledge or permission. I called the bank first, thinking maybe there'd been some kind of identity theft situation. Maybe someone had hacked our account and was siphoning money electronically. But no. The customer service rep confirmed that all the transfers had been authorized by someone with legitimate access to the account. Someone who knew our passwords and security questions. My wife. I sat in my office for 2 hours, staring at those numbers, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There had to be an explanation. Some reasonable reason why Marissa had been quietly moving tens of thousands of dollars out of our joint account without telling me. Maybe she was planning a surprise, a vacation, or a home improvement project, or something special for our anniversary. But even as I tried to convince myself there was an innocent explanation, my gut knew better. You don't secretly move 40 grand if you're planning something nice. You move 40 grand when you're planning something else entirely. I printed out 6 months of bank statements and spread them across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what it felt like I was investigating a crime committed against me by the person I trusted most in the world. The pattern was clear once I laid it all out. The transfers always happened on weekdays when I was at work. They were never the same amount twice, probably to avoid triggering any automatic fraud alerts. And they'd been going on for months, maybe longer. I'd have to go back further to see the full scope of what she'd been doing. When I got home that evening, I found Marissa in the kitchen, chatting on the phone with one of her girlfriends about some spa weekend they were planning. She looked relaxed, happy even. Like a woman without a care in the world, certainly not like someone who'd been systematically draining our bank account behind her husband's back. I waited until she hung up before I spread the bank statements across the kitchen counter like a dealer laying out cards. "We need to talk," I said. She glanced at the papers, and for just a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear? Guilt? But it was gone so fast I almost missed it, replaced by that same cold expression she'd worn during her birthday speech. "About what?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of wine like we were about to discuss the weather. "About the $37,000 you've transferred out of our joint account without telling me." I expected denial. I expected excuses. Hell, I even expected anger. Maybe she'd flip it around and make me the bad guy for snooping through our finances. What I didn't expect was laughter. She actually laughed. Not a nervous giggle or an embarrassed chuckle. A full-throated laugh like I'd just told her the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "Is that what this is about?" she said, taking a sip of her wine. "Jesus, you're so dramatic." It went toward the house and my business. You wouldn't understand. My business. This was the first I'd heard about any business. Last I knew, Marissa was taking pottery classes and doing yoga instructor training. When exactly had she become an entrepreneur? What business? I asked. And why wouldn't I understand? "It's my money too." Another laugh. "Your money?" "Right. Because I don't contribute anything to this household." "Is that it?" "That's not what I said. I just want to know where $40,000 went without my knowledge." She rolled her eyes like I was being ridiculous. "The yoga studio space I'm looking at requires a deposit. The house needed new landscaping. My car needed repairs. Life costs money, in case you haven't noticed. $40,000 for landscaping and car repairs. There were other things. Look, it's not like you were using the money for anything important. It was just sitting there. Just sitting there. Like our emergency fund was some kind of abandoned property she could claim for herself. Like 15 years of marriage didn't entitle me to know when she was making major financial decisions with our shared resources. Marissa, that money was supposed to be our safety net. What if something happens? What if one of us loses our job or gets sick? She shrugged. Then we'll figure it out. We always do. No, I wanted to scream. I always figure it out. I'm the one who makes sure the bills get paid and the mortgage doesn't go into default and we have food in the refrigerator. You just spend whatever you want and assume I'll handle the consequences. But I didn't scream. I just stood there, looking at the woman I'd married, wondering when she'd become this stranger who thought stealing from our joint account was no big deal. "You should have told me," I said finally. "We're supposed to be partners. Partners don't make unilateral decisions about $40,000. "You're being dramatic," she said again, walking toward the stairs. "It's not like you were using the money." That night, lying alone in the guest room I'd been exiled to, I made a decision. If Marissa could make unilateral financial decisions, then so could I. But I'd do it legally, carefully, and on my own terms. The numbers didn't lie. They never do. And they just told me everything I needed to know about where this marriage was really headed. Finding the right lawyer wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be. Turns out when your marriage is circling the drain and your wife's been playing fast and loose with your bank account, Google becomes your best friend real quick. I spent 3 days reading reviews, checking credentials, and looking for someone who specialized in what my research told me was called asset protection in high-conflict divorce situations. Ramon Archer's office was in one of those converted Victorian houses downtown, the kind with creaky hardwood floors and windows that actually opened. Nothing fancy, but clean and professional. The kind of place that said, "I'll get the job done without charging you for marble countertops in the lobby." Ramon himself was maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of steady eyes that made you feel like he'd seen every possible way a marriage could go sideways. He didn't smile when we shook hands, but he didn't look at me like I was pathetic either. Just professional. All business. "So what brings you here today?" he asked, settling behind a desk that looked like it had survived a few decades of other people's worst days. I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying around for 3 days. Bank statements, mortgage documents, credit card bills, everything that painted a picture of our financial situation. My hands were steadier than I'd expected them to be. My wife has been transferring money out of our joint accounts without my knowledge, I said. Almost $40,000 over the past 6 months. When I confronted her about it, she basically told me it was none of my business. Ramon nodded, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. And you want to file for divorce? I want to protect myself, I said. I want to freeze the accounts, sell the house, and restructure my will. I want to make sure she can't drain every penny we have while I'm figuring out my next move. How long have you been married? 15 years. Any kids? No. Whose name is on the house? This was the question I'd been dreading, but also the one that might save my ass. Mine. I bought it 3 years before we got married, put the down payment down with money from my inheritance. I added her to the deed after we got married, but the mortgage has always been in my name only. Ramon's pen stopped moving. He looked up at me with something that might have been approval. That's good. That's very good for your position. What about other assets? The cars are in both our names, but I make the payments. Most of our retirement accounts are separate, 401ks from our respective jobs. The joint savings and checking accounts are where she's been helping herself to unauthorized withdrawals. And you want this done quietly? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Did I want drama? Did I want a knockdown, drag-out fight where we aired all our dirty laundry in front of judges and mediators and anyone else who'd listen? Or did I want to handle this like the grown-up I'd been pretending to be for the past 15 years? Yeah, I said. I want this done quietly. No drama, no social media posts, no trying to destroy each other. I just want out, and I want to make sure I'm not left holding the bag for her spending habits. Ramon smiled for the first time since I'd walked into his office. Then let's begin. The next 2 hours were like getting a master class in financial self-defense. Ramon explained how we could freeze the joint accounts legally, how to protect my individual assets, how to handle the house sale, and what my rights were regarding the money she'd already taken. The good news, he said, is that since you can prove unauthorized transfers, we can likely recover most of that money as part of the divorce settlement. The bad news is that if she's been doing this for 6 months, she's probably planning something herself. Like what? Like her own exit strategy. People don't usually start hiding money unless they're preparing for something. You might not be the only one planning to end this marriage. That hit me like a punch to the gut. All this time, I'd been thinking I was taking control of the situation, making the tough decision to leave. But what if Marissa had been planning her own escape route? What if those transfers weren't just selfish spending, but actual preparation for a life that didn't include me? What do you recommend? I asked. Move fast, but move smart. We'll file the paperwork to freeze the joint accounts tomorrow. I'll have a real estate agent I trust give you a market evaluation on the house by Friday. And I'd recommend you start documenting everything. Every conversation, every financial transaction, every interaction that might be relevant to the divorce proceedings. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, looking around at the room that had become my prison cell. The walls were covered with photos from our marriage, vacations, anniversaries, holiday parties with friends. 15 years of memories captured in frames that Marissa had probably bought and arranged without asking my opinion. But as I looked closer, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I wasn't in most of these photos anymore. Oh, there were a few from the early years, our honeymoon in Italy, a Christmas party from maybe 5 years ago. But the recent ones, the ones from the past couple of years, were all Marissa with her friends, Marissa with her family, Marissa with her yoga instructor certification class. It was like someone had been systematically editing me out of our life story, one photo at a time. I grabbed a legal pad from my briefcase and started making a list, not just of assets and debts, but of everything I'd paid for in this house. The mortgage payments, the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance, the utilities, the cable bill, the internet, the landscaping she'd mentioned spending thousands on, the car payments for both vehicles. Then I started a second list. Things that were mine before the marriage. The house itself, my photography equipment, my retirement accounts, the vintage guitar collection I'd been building since college, my dad's tools in the garage, and finally, a third list, the one that mattered most. Things I wanted to reclaim that had nothing to do with money or property. My peace of mind, my self-respect, my right to have an opinion in my own house, my right to know where my money was going, my right to be treated like a partner instead of a walking ATM. That last item I underlined twice, then added one more line at the bottom. my right to disappear on my own terms. Because that's what this was really about. For years, Marissa had been making me disappear slowly, from our bedroom, from our photos, from financial decisions, from my own life. But if I was going to disappear, it would be my choice, my timeline, my way. I looked around the guest room one more time, at all those photos where I'd been cropped out of my own marriage. Tomorrow, Ramon would start the legal process. The accounts would be frozen. The house would go on the market. My will would be rewritten. But tonight, I was going to do something I hadn't done in years. I was going to plan something without asking permission, without checking if it was okay with Marissa, without worrying about keeping the peace. I was going to plan my freedom. Timing is everything in war, and make no mistake, that's what this had become. A quiet, calculated war where the winner would be whoever moved first and moved smartest. Marissa had been playing this game for months without me even knowing the rules. But now I was ready to play my hand. The Palm Springs weekend was perfect. Marissa had been planning this girl's trip for 2 months. Some fancy spa resort where she and 3 of her college friends would spend 4 days getting massages, drinking overpriced wine, and probably talking about how disappointing their husbands were. She'd booked it using one of our credit cards, naturally, without asking if we could afford a $1,500 weekend getaway. I need this, she'd announced when the confirmation email showed up in our shared inbox. I've been so stressed lately, and the girls and I never get to spend quality time together anymore. Stressed. Right. Must be exhausting draining your husband's bank account and slowly erasing him from his own house. I just smiled and nodded, the way I'd been doing for 15 years. Sounds great, babe. You deserve some relaxation time. What I didn't tell her was that I deserved some too. Just not the kind that involved cucumber facials and poolside cocktails. The Friday morning she left, I stood in the driveway watching her pack her BMW with enough luggage for a month-long European vacation. 3 suitcases, a makeup case, a bag full of shoes, and some kind of special pillow she claimed was essential for proper sleep. The car was so loaded down I was surprised it could still make it up the driveway. You sure you have everything? I asked, giving her a kiss on the cheek that felt as fake as everything else about our marriage. I think so, she said, checking her phone for the 100th time. Flight doesn't leave until 11, but you know how crazy LAX gets on Fridays. Drive safe. Text me when you land. I will. Love you. The words came out automatically, muscle memory from 15 years of saying goodbye. But they felt hollow now, like we were both just reading lines from a script we'd memorized long ago. I waved until her car disappeared around the corner, then went back inside and got to work. The bills came first. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, planning every detail like a military operation. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, our checkbook, and a cup of coffee that actually tasted good for once because I wasn't drinking it in a rush to avoid another awkward conversation with my wife. Electric bill, paid in full. Gas company, paid in full. Water and sewer, paid in full. Cable and internet, paid in full. Both car payments, paid in full. Property taxes for the quarter, paid in full. Homeowners insurance, paid in full. Every single bill that would come due over the next 3 months, I took care of that morning. Not because I'm a nice guy, though I am, but because I wanted a clean exit. No loose ends, no angry phone calls, no way for anyone to say I'd left them holding the bag for my responsibilities. While I was handling the bills, my phone buzzed with a text from Ramon. Paperwork filed. Accounts frozen as of 10 a.m. House appraiser coming Monday at 2 p.m. You sure about this? I typed back. Never been more sure of anything in my life. The house transfer was trickier, but Ramon had walked me through it step by step. Since I'd owned the house before our marriage and had only added Marissa to the deed as a gesture of goodwill, California law was actually on my side for once. With the right paperwork and the proper legal justification, like, say, unauthorized withdrawals from joint accounts, I could reclaim sole ownership. The locksmith arrived at noon sharp. Nice guy named Miguel who didn't ask any questions when I told him I needed all the locks changed immediately. He worked fast and professional, installing new deadbolts on the front door, back door, and garage. When he was done, I had a house that was truly mine for the first time in years. Next came the real estate agent. Carmen Rodriguez had been recommended by Ramon, and she understood the situation immediately. Discreet, professional, and fast. How quickly do you want this to move? She asked, walking through the house with her tablet, taking notes and photos. As fast as legally possible. I want it listed by Monday, and I'll take the first reasonable offer that comes in. Any sentimental attachment to the place? I looked around at the living room with its museum-quality furniture I wasn't allowed to sit on, the kitchen where I'd baked that birthday cake that started this whole mess, the stairs leading up to the master bedroom I'd been exiled from. None whatsoever. While Carmen worked on the listing, I drove across town to look at the furnished apartment I'd found through a corporate housing service. It was nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, basic furniture that was actually comfortable instead of decorative. But it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, it was mine. No yoga mats in the corner, no essential oil diffusers, no meditation altars, no brother-in-law eating my food and insulting me over dinner. I signed the lease under the name of my consulting business, something I'd set up years ago for tax purposes, but had never really used. Cash deposit, first month's rent, and I had a place to land when this whole thing went public. The hardest part was packing. Not because I had so much stuff, but because I had so little stuff that was actually mine anymore. 15 years of marriage, and what did I have to show for it? A few boxes of clothes, my laptop, some books, my camera equipment, and my dad's old toolbox from the garage. Everything else belonged to the house, or to Marissa, or to the life we'd built together that had slowly stopped including me. The furniture, the art on the walls, the kitchen gadgets, even the towels in the bathroom, none of it felt like mine anymore. I loaded my car with the essentials and left the rest. If she wanted the fancy throw pillows and the singing bowls and the organic everything in the refrigerator, she could have it all. I was traveling light from now on. The envelope was the finishing touch. I'd spent 2 hours crafting the perfect letter. Not angry, not bitter, just factual. A simple explanation of what I'd discovered, what I'd done about it, and what came next. I included copies of the bank statements showing her unauthorized transfers, the legal documents freezing our joint accounts, and the divorce papers Ramon had prepared. No drama, no accusations, just the facts, laid out in black and white the way I'd always preferred. I left the envelope on the kitchen counter where she'd be sure to find it, right next to the spare keys to the house she no longer had access to. By the time her plane landed in Palm Springs, I was sitting in my new apartment, eating takeout Chinese food on a couch that was comfortable enough to actually sit on. My phone was off. My old life was officially behind me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The first call came at 6:47 a.m. on Monday morning. I know because I was sitting in my new apartment, drinking coffee that I'd bought with my own money and actually enjoying the silence, when my phone started buzzing on the kitchen counter. Marissa's name flashed across the screen, and for a split second, I almost answered it out of pure habit. Instead, I hit decline and took another sip of my coffee. It tasted even better after that. She called back immediately. Decline. Then again. Decline. By the 4th call, I turned the phone off entirely and went about my morning routine. Shower in a bathroom where I didn't have to navigate around meditation crystals and organic face masks. Breakfast at a table where I could actually spread out the newspaper without someone H. My phone stayed off until noon, when I finally powered it back on to check messages. 17 missed calls from Marissa, 11 text messages, 3 voicemails, and 1 very interesting call from Ramon. I called him back first. Well, he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. She's definitely panicking. Called the office 17 times since yesterday afternoon. Left some very colorful messages with my receptionist. What kind of colorful? The kind where she alternates between threats and tears. First she was going to sue me for malpractice, then she was sobbing about how you've destroyed her life. Standard high-conflict divorce behavior, really. I found myself smiling. Not because I enjoyed her pain. I'm not that petty. But because for the first time in our marriage, there were consequences for her actions. Real consequences that she couldn't laugh off or dismiss as me being dramatic. What did she say exactly? She wanted to know how we could freeze joint accounts without her consent. I explained that when there's evidence of unauthorized transfers, the other account holder has legal grounds to protect remaining assets. She didn't like that answer much. I bet she didn't. Then she tried a different approach. Said you were having some kind of mental breakdown and couldn't be trusted to make financial decisions. Wanted me to undo everything and restore her access immediately. The mental breakdown angle was classic Marissa. When logic failed, attack the messenger. Make the other person seem unstable, unreasonable, incapable of rational thought. It's a trick she'd been using on me for years, and apparently she thought it would work on my lawyer too. How'd that go over? About as well as you'd expect. I told her she'd need to take that up with a judge if she wanted to challenge our actions. That's when the real crying started. After I hung up with Ramon, I scrolled through Marissa's text messages. They told the story of her weekend better than any movie could have. Saturday, 11:43 p.m. Call me back now. What the hell did you do? Sunday, 7:22 a.m. The house key doesn't work. Are you kidding me right now? Sunday, 8:45 a.m. My card got declined at breakfast. Fix this. Sunday, 10:17 a.m. I'm at the bank. They say the account is frozen. Call me, or I'm calling the police. Sunday, 2:33 p.m. You can't do this. We need to talk like adults. Sunday, 6:48 p.m. I'm staying at a hotel tonight because I can't get into my own house. Sunday, 9:12 p.m. My friends are asking questions. This is humiliating. Monday, 6:15 a.m. I know you're reading these. Stop being childish and call me back. Reading through them, I could picture the whole weekend unfolding. Marissa at some overpriced spa restaurant, pulling out her credit card to pay for mimosas and avocado toast, only to have it declined in front of her college friends. The awkward drive back to the house, probably making excuses about why she had to leave early. Standing on the front porch with her 3 suitcases, trying key after key that no longer worked. But the best part was what she hadn't said in any of those messages. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, secretly draining our bank account might have consequences. Not once did she take responsibility for the situation she'd created. Instead, it was all about what I had done to her. How I was being unfair, childish, dramatic. How I was embarrassing her in front of her friends. How I was the problem that needed to be fixed. The voicemails were even better. In the first one, she was trying to sound reasonable. Look, I know you're upset about the money thing, but we can work this out. Just call me back so we can figure this out like adults. By the second voicemail, the mask was slipping. This is insane. You can't just lock me out of my own house and freeze our accounts. I have bills to pay. I have a life. Call me back right now. The third one was pure panic. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this isn't funny anymore. I'm stranded here. My friends are asking questions I can't answer. You're making me look like a fool. Making her look like a fool. That's what she was worried about. Not the damage she'd done to our marriage. Not the trust she'd broken by stealing from our joint account. Not the years of slowly erasing me from my own life. She was worried about looking bad in front of her college friends. I saved all the messages. Ramon had told me to document everything, and Marissa was doing a beautiful job of documenting herself. Every text, every voicemail, every panic call to the lawyer's office was proof of exactly who she really was when the chips were down. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been the one calling her, texting her, trying to get her attention, trying to fix whatever was wrong between us. I'd been the one bending over backwards to keep the peace, to make things work, to save our marriage from whatever was slowly killing it. And now? Now she was the one desperately trying to reach me. She was the one who needed something from me. She was the one who couldn't just walk away and pretend everything was fine. The tables had turned, and apparently she didn't like the view from this side. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at a little Italian place near my new apartment. Nothing fancy, just good food and a glass of wine that I didn't have to justify to anyone. The waitress was friendly, the pasta was perfect, and for the first time in years, I ate a meal without someone criticizing my table manners or complaining about the restaurant I'd chosen. When I got back to my apartment, there were 6 more missed calls from Marissa. I deleted them without listening and went to bed early, setting my phone to silent. Tomorrow would bring more calls, more messages, more demands that I fix the mess she'd created. But tonight, I was going to sleep soundly in a bed that was actually mine, in a place where I was wanted, in a life that finally made sense. Let her panic. Let her scramble. Let her figure out what it felt like to have your world turned upside down by someone you trusted. I'd been living in that world for years. Now it was her turn. Marissa wasn't the type to suffer in silence. Never had been. When she was happy, the whole world knew about it through carefully curated Instagram posts and Facebook updates. When she was angry, she made sure everyone within a 50-mile radius felt her pain. So when her panic didn't get the response she wanted, she did what she always did. She went public. I found out about the social media campaign from my buddy Jake, who called me Wednesday morning, sounding more confused than concerned. "Dude, what the hell is going on with you and Marissa?" he asked. "She's posting some pretty heavy stuff online." I hadn't checked social media in days. One of the perks of my new life was not feeling obligated to scroll through everyone else's highlight reels while I ate breakfast. But Jake's call made me curious enough to log into Facebook for the first time in a week. The first post was from Monday night, just hours after she'd discovered her locked-out situation. A long, rambling paragraph about emotional abuse and financial manipulation and how some people show their true colors when you need them most. No names mentioned. Of course, she was too smart for that. But anyone who knew us would understand exactly who she was talking about. Tuesday brought a photo of her sitting in what looked like a hotel room, looking appropriately devastated. The caption read, "When the person you trusted most in the world decides to punish you for speaking your truth. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us the deepest. Hashtag betrayed, hashtag strong women, hashtag never give you up." By Wednesday, she'd escalated to sharing articles about narcissistic partners and financial abuse in marriage. Each post got dozens of sympathetic comments from her friends and family. "You deserve so much better. He never deserved you. Stay strong, girl." The irony was almost beautiful. She was accusing me of financial abuse while conveniently forgetting that she'd stolen $40,000 from our joint account. She was talking about betrayal while leaving out the part where she'd told me to disappear from her life on her birthday. She was playing the victim while ignoring the fact that she'd spent years systematically erasing me from my own house. But here's the thing about social media, it's all performance. And I'd stopped being interested in performing a long time ago. My phone started ringing with calls from mutual friends, family members, even a few coworkers who'd seen the posts. Everyone wanted to know my side of the story. Everyone expected me to defend myself, to fight back, to set the record straight. Instead, I did something that apparently nobody expected. I stayed quiet. When my sister called asking if the posts were true, I said, "Sarah, I appreciate you checking in, but I'm not going to discuss my marriage on social media or anywhere else." When her brother Wallace finally crawled out of his basement to send me a nasty text calling me a coward and a deadbeat, I blocked his number without responding. When our mutual friend Tom cornered me at the grocery store asking what really happened, I just said, "Sometimes marriages end. That's between Marissa and me." The silence drove them all crazy. They wanted drama. They wanted explanations. They wanted me to play my part in whatever soap opera Marissa was directing. But I learned something important over the past few weeks. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every attack requires a defense. I had proof of everything that mattered. Bank statements showing her unauthorized transfers. Emails where she'd discussed edging me out with her lawyer brother. Text messages where she'd admitted to spending our money without telling me. I had documentation of years of being dismissed, ignored, and slowly erased from my own life. But I didn't need to wave that proof around on Facebook like some kind of trophy. The people who mattered already knew who I was. The people who didn't know me well enough to give me the benefit of the doubt, well, their opinions weren't really my problem anymore. 3 weeks into her campaign, Marissa escalated again. She found my new number, probably through her brother's connections, since he seemed to know everyone in town, and the calls started up again. But these weren't the panicked, demanding calls from before. These were different, calculated. I changed my number again, deleted all my social media accounts, canceled the old email address I'd had for 10 years, and set up a new one. If she wanted to fight a war of words, she'd have to do it without me. The beauty of silence is that it forces other people to fill in the blanks. And most people, when they're emotional and desperate, don't fill in those blanks very wisely. Marissa's posts got longer, more frantic, more obviously one-sided. She started contradicting herself, sharing too many details, sounding less like a victim and more like someone with an agenda. Her friends stopped commenting as much. The "you go girl" responses tapered off. Even her own family seemed to be getting tired of the daily drama updates. Meanwhile, I was learning to enjoy my quiet life. I woke up when I wanted to wake up. I ate what I wanted to eat. I watched whatever I wanted on TV without someone sighing dramatically about my terrible taste in entertainment. I started taking photography classes again, something I'd given up years ago because Marissa thought my camera equipment took up too much space in the house. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning. I even went on a couple of dates with a woman I'd met at the coffee shop near my apartment. Nothing serious, just dinner and conversation with someone who seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. It had been so long since I'd talked to someone who actually listened to my answers instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. The contrast was stark. While Marissa was exhausting herself trying to control the narrative about our failed marriage, I was actually living a life worth talking about. She could keep her social media campaign. I had something better: peace, privacy, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself over chaos. The silence wasn't just my strategy. It was my salvation. 6 weeks into my new life, I'd settled into a routine that actually made sense. Coffee at 7, quick workout, shower, then off to work from my laptop at the little cafe down the street. The barista, Maria, had started making my usual order before I even asked for it. Small gestures like that meant more to me than they probably should have. I was sorting through my mail that Thursday evening when I saw an envelope with handwriting I didn't recognize. No return address, just my name written in careful cursive on cream-colored paper. The kind of letter you don't see much anymore in a world of texts and emails. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, with the same careful handwriting. "Dear Michael," it began. I had to read the signature twice before I realized who it was from. Linda Voss, the elderly woman who lived 3 houses down from our old place. I'd helped her carry groceries a few times over the years, shoveled her driveway during the big snow last winter, but we'd never really had what you'd call actual conversations. "I hope this letter finds you well," she wrote. I debated for weeks whether to reach out, but my conscience won't let me stay silent any longer. What came next hit me like a punch to the gut. I watched everything from my front porch over the years. The way she spoke to you when you came home from work. The way she rolled her eyes when you were trying to fix something in the yard. The way she dismissed you in front of other people like you were some kind of hired help instead of her husband. My hands started shaking. Someone had seen it. Someone outside our marriage, outside our circle of friends and family, had actually witnessed what I'd been living through. I saw how you'd come home with flowers for no reason, and she'd barely look up from her phone. I saw you washing her car in the driveway while she sat inside complaining to her friends on the phone about something you'd done wrong. I saw you carrying all the groceries while she walked ahead without offering to help. Linda described moments I'd forgotten, daily humiliations that had become so normal I'd stopped noticing them. The way Marissa would interrupt me when I was talking to neighbors. How she'd correct me in front of other people about everything from the weather to what year we'd moved into the house. I wanted to say something so many times, but I didn't think it was my place. Now I wish I had. The letter went on for 2 pages, detailing years of observations from someone who'd been watching our marriage fall apart from the outside. Things I'd thought were private, things I'd convinced myself were normal, things I'd made excuses for because I thought that's what love meant. "What broke my heart most," she continued, "was watching you get smaller each year. You used to wave and smile when you saw me in the garden. Toward the end, you'd just nod and hurry inside, like you were afraid to be friendly to people." I had to stop reading and take a breath. She was right. I had gotten smaller. Not just physically, though I'd lost weight from the stress. I'd gotten smaller in every way that mattered. I just want you to know that someone saw it all. Someone witnessed what you endured. And I'm proud of you for finally walking away. The tears came without warning. Big, ugly sobs that I couldn't control. I hadn't cried, really cried, since the night of Marissa's birthday. But Linda's words opened something in me that I'd been keeping locked up tight. For the first time, someone had seen me. Really seen me. Not the version of myself I'd been pretending to be, not the happy husband I'd performed for 15 years, but the real me. The man who'd been slowly disappearing in his own life. I read the letter 3 more times that night, each time feeling a little more human, a little more real, a little more worthy of being seen. 3 weeks after Linda's letter, my phone rang at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been reading in bed, actually enjoying a book for the first time in years without someone complaining about the lamp being too bright. The number on the screen made my stomach drop. Somehow, Marissa had found my new number again. I almost hit decline, but something made me pause. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the need for closure. Maybe I was just tired of running from conversations that needed to happen eventually. Hello, Marissa. Michael. Her voice was different. Softer. None of the sharp edges I'd gotten used to over the past few years. Thank you for picking up. I didn't say anything. I'd learned the power of silence, and I wasn't going to fill the awkward pause just to make her comfortable. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, she continued. But we need to talk. I've had time to think about everything, and I made mistakes. Mistakes. Such a clean, simple word for years of emotional erosion. The kids miss you, she said, and I almost laughed. What kids? We didn't have kids. Then I realized she meant her brother's kids, the ones who'd occasionally visit and run around breaking my stuff while Wallace sat on his ass complaining about my Wi-Fi speed. I miss you, she whispered, and for just a second, I heard the woman I'd married 15 years ago. The one who used to laugh at my jokes and steal bites of cookie dough. Can we talk? Maybe meet for coffee? Just to see if we can work this out. My heart wanted to say yes. 15 years of muscle memory was screaming at me to fix this, to go back, to try harder, to be the understanding husband who could make everything work if he just tried hard enough. But my gut said no. My gut remembered the birthday cake and the cold dismissal. My gut remembered the unauthorized bank transfers and the dismissive laughter. My gut remembered being a ghost in my own house. You told me to leave your life, I said quietly. On your birthday, in front of everyone we knew. You said the best gift would be if I disappeared. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. No, Marissa. You said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect me to actually listen. She started crying then. Real tears, not the performative sobbing from her social media posts. We're struggling. The house payments, the bills, everything's falling apart. Please, Michael. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. And there it was. The real reason for the call. Not love, not missing me, not wanting to repair our marriage. Money. She needed my income, my financial stability, my willingness to pick up the pieces of whatever mess she'd created. I hope you find peace, Marissa, I said, meaning it. But I won't go back to being a ghost in my own marriage. Michael, wait. I hung up and turned off my phone. That was the last time I heard from her. Later, I learned she'd moved back in with her mother and was working part-time at a yoga studio. Wallace had finally gotten a job, probably because the free ride was over. The house sold 2 months later to a young couple with twin babies who would probably be much happier there than we ever were. But that night, I just sat in my bed, holding my phone, feeling the weight of 15 years finally lifting off my shoulders. 6 months later, I wake up every morning to silence. Real silence. Not the tense quiet of walking on eggshells, but the peaceful kind that comes when nobody's waiting to criticize your choices. My apartment feels like home now. The walls have my photography hanging on them. Pictures I took during weekend hikes, shots of the city at sunset, moments I captured just because they made me smile. No singing bowls or meditation altars, just spaces that reflect who I actually am. I've started painting again. Watercolors, mostly. Nothing fancy, just colors on paper that help my mind relax after long days. It's something I'd given up years ago because there wasn't room for my easel in the redesigned house. Funny how you don't realize what you've lost until you get it back. The coffee shop knows my order. The hiking group knows my name. I've been on 3 dates with Sarah from the bookstore, nothing serious yet, but she laughs at my jokes and asks about my day like she actually cares about the answer. Last weekend, I walked past a playground where a father was sharing a slice of birthday cake with his son. The kid had frosting on his nose, grinning like it was the best day of his life. For a second, I remembered being that hopeful guy who thought the perfect lemon cake could fix everything. But here's the thing, I don't want that story anymore. That was the story of a man who thought love meant disappearing for someone else's comfort. This is the story of a man who chose himself. I'm not rich or famous or living some Instagram perfect life, but I wake up every day knowing I matter in my own space. I exist without permission. I take up room without apologizing. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to disappear from a life that was slowly erasing you, so you can reappear as who you were always meant to be.